Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We have a very special video for you today. It's a little sit down with the #2 ranked rocket racer in the world. His name is Zick, and if you don't know him, where are you living? He might be the best player in the world. We go over everything that beginners and advanced players need to know. He shares his insight in the game and more. So without further ado, let's get into it. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn those bell notifications on, and his link will be in the description to check out his channel. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Make sure you hit that button. Hit the button. Let's get into it. Good morning.
Morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sounds good. I can. Sounds good, man. It's nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. It's early over there for you, no?
Yeah, with my sleep schedule though, it's late, but wanted to stay up just so I could have this time with you, man.
Awesome. Appreciate it. I appreciate you stopping in,
Yeah, no worries.
You were destroying our lobbies yesterday, so it...
Well, it's always fun to be playing with the people in the community. It's great to always see how other people are doing, and I love trying to help others as well, even if it's just for me playing with them in the lobbies. So yeah, I'm more than happy to take this time to show you whatever you're looking to learn, and maybe some people in the chat can learn some stuff as well. So
hopefully. I mean, like I said, Yuza, I'm an old guy, I'm way past my prime in terms of gaming.
yeah. Well, something I want to say on that is, considering other games that are out there, I think anyone of any age can get as good as they want at pretty much any game.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's the argument that as you get older, maybe your reflexes get a little slower or something like that, your reaction time, but honestly, it shouldn't be anything to stop anyone from achieving what they want. So it all comes with time and practice, and everyone will be able to do good in this game.
For sure. I mean, I think I've played Call of Duty for a long time, and man, those 12-year-olds are just absolutely crapping on me these days. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, they just get younger and younger every day.
They do. All right, but I'm interested to learn, what it is that you're doing that I'm not doing, obviously.
But yeah, is there something you'd want to talk about first, or you want to go in order on anything? You want to go over certain maps, or what's up?
Hey, you're the master, man. I'm just I don't know. I think I've been doing, earlier in the week, I think on Tuesday, I did like a no turbo challenge to see how far I could get without using any turbo. And let me tell you, my drifting has improved immensely from not being able to use any turbo. But I have noticed that, the top guys can carry their speed so much more consistently than, like, the top 15 just carries so much more speed consistently throughout the whole lap than anyone below that, right? And I think that's really where the huge speed difference is just having a higher average speed around the lap, obviously.
Yeah. So I can go ahead and touch on that then. We'll talk about speed in this game. You'll see more and more with the newer world records that are coming out and the new routes, that a good general rule to follow, and this goes for anyone at any rank, is keeping your speed as high as possible for as long as possible is always best. And so having a higher consistent speed as much as you can throughout the whole race is something you want to aim for. You'll notice that in a couple tracks now, if someone was to do their route perfectly, some of the world record routes that are out now, you'll notice that they never drop down to 570 speed. And for anyone that doesn't know, 570 is your default max speed whenever you're just using your full throttle. Anything above 570 is considered you having a boost in speed, so you would have either drifted or used your turbo boost or something like that, right? And so in these world record routes, in some of these maps, Festive Falls is the best example I could think of off the top of my head. you'll never really see any of the top players be at 570 speed anywhere on Festive Falls. And if they ever do drop the 570, then it's maybe because they held a drift too long, or maybe they misinputted somewhere, they screwed up a little bit. But in less than a second, they'll be right back up to about 700. So, yeah, that's something that a lot of top players are really focusing on, especially when it comes to routes and optimizations.
Yeah, for sure. Can we? I noticed that. So your sidewinder play without using the exploit there at 259. Is that what it was, or whatever it was? That super quick time. I think it's probably important for some people to know that the world records, the routes are probably the best, most optimized routes for that track, but they don't always translate to ranked. Right? Like, I mean, for that route that you took on Sidewinder, when you boost just past the S tunnel to that next section, there's a good chance that you might not be able to hit that in a race due to the fact that there's cars between you and the. If you're behind a few guys, then it's you have to. I think adaptation throughout the race is really key. I mean, in your case, you're always in first, so I mean, not much adaptation needed, but.
Well, no, there is adaptation needed in first, actually. You might be a little surprised. But there's a really long conversation to be had when it comes to transferring world record routes into ranked matches. And this is something that if you're at the top and you're not really thinking about this, I really suggest you start. This is part of a perspective to have in the game. And I think the more that you understand how routes can transfer into ranked matches when you have other cars around you, when you have catch-up speed to deal with, the more you can understand that, the more you can easily adapt to what's going on in your game, and you can give yourself an advantage over other. A great example that I could think of off the top of my head, something that happened recently in a private match. I was going against the other top players. One of them was Look Easy. He's another current top 5 player right now.
Yep.
We were playing Curvy Canyon 2, and at the end of Curvy Canyon 2 with the current top routes, everyone should be able to have 2 boosts at the last straight of the map. Now, I was in the lead going into the last straight, and I noticed that I was just a little bit short of turbo for my second boost. Okay, so if the person behind me, who was Look Easy at this time, if he would have had 2 boosts and I wasn't able to get my second boost, he would have passed me at the end and would have beat me, right? But what I did is I noticed that I was short on boost, and so I took an alternate route at the end to secure that second boost for me, and ultimately that allowed me to stay ahead of Look Easy and get the win. So even though you're in first, there is still adaptations that you'll need to make to hold that position, and you always need to be paying attention to the things going on around you. And even if you're able to guess and understand the situation your opponents are in, that makes you an even stronger foe on the racetrack. So
for sure. And I have I think that speaks to it's funny you say that, because I have a series, a deep dive into each track coming up, but I do a commentary over a race that I have in rank that'll go through all my whole thought process. And I just recorded Windy Way this morning, and a lot of what you were just saying is the same things that I'm commentating throughout the track. Once you get bumped somewhere, even if you're in first, there's so many different things that you still need to be able to be aware of. And if you have an optimized route and you know how many boosts you need at a certain point in time, but you don't have that, then for sure you're gonna have to take a little something else to maybe get that, so you know that the guy behind you is not gonna be a threat if you can just hold off, right?
Right. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and touch back on the Sidewinder route that you brought up. So what I've done differently, what I did differently at Sidewinder to help me get the time that I got, is there is so everyone who can imagine Sidewinder, towards the end of the map, when you come out of all the S tunnels, there's going to be this wooden ramp that you will jump off of or drop off of, and you'll fall down and you'll have this long straightaway ahead of you. You have some wooden walls on the side, you have all these barriers down below. And what people have chosen to do there is they will use typically 2 boosts to fly across that whole road, and that will take them into the final corner of the map. I heard originally from another player named Infinity that there was a way to slingshot, quote unquote, this is something people call it, yourself off of one of the wooden walls, and it could help you keep your speed as you fly through the air over that gap. So I decided to experiment with that. And basically what this whole slingshotting thing is you will do preferably a long drift before a ramp or someplace that you're going to jump. And then you will go into the air and you will hold that drift. So you will drift stall. And then you will land on a different surface. So on Sidewinder, you will see me land on the wooden wall to my left. And then the moment that my car lands on that wall, I will allow the drift to end, and my car will get the speed from that drift. And I will also use my boost at the same time. So I'm stacking all of this speed onto myself at once. And doing that just allows me to basically just fly through the air at a very quick speed, and it will just carry me all the way down. And so since I was able to do that, that gave me the ability to take one of those boosts that a lot of people are using through the air and move it somewhere else. Okay? So then I had to think, where am I going to move this boost? Where would be the next best place to use it? And after some experimenting, I actually found a great place to use it was before the ramp. And doing that also helps me go even faster over that long gap to the last corner.
Right. Yeah.
So all of that combined gives me just an immense amount of speed there.
Morning, Silent.
And ultimately a lot of time saved. And in ranked, it still works very well. The number one way that it's ever going to get beaten out in ranked, from what I can imagine, is if someone is in front of me or potentially right next to me at that time. And the reason why is because even though I'll be starting to use my boost before him, if he was to use both boosts in the air like people usually do, he's going to carry just a little bit more speed into that final corner. So me using my boost strategy in Sidewinder isn't ultimately giving me a super advantage over someone who's already doing the old route or the old boost strategy.
Right.
You can say. So ultimately in a ranked match, if me and another person are right next to each other, I'm not really getting a super advantage over him. But at the end of the day, the route that I did on Sidewinder for the world record is still a completely viable option in ranked.
For sure.
So that's what I found.
Neutro says, is there a difference in the amount of boost you build up based on how long you hold the boost? Like deeper into the boost, it feels like you start building it slower. Have you noticed that?
So when it comes to the actual turbo bar, so on your screen where you have your boost being built up, you have those 3 different sections and that one bar goes up. I haven't really been paying too much attention to what causes it to go up or not. I know the number one thing that causes it to grow is drifting, and then it grows passively as well. While you're using a boost though, I don't know if using a turbo boost has any effect on the turbo build, so I can't specifically speak on that. But something that I'll say now while we're on the topic, and maybe this will answer a potential future question for either him or someone else, and I talked to someone about this earlier today as well, is there's going to be a lot of times in a lot of places on maps where you're going to see people using their boost later than they need to. And what I mean by that is there's going to be some times where you're jumping this really long gap, and in your mind, and this is totally reasonable to think, okay? I don't blame anyone for thinking this, because I thought the same way, all right? If you jump this really long gap, you're probably going to think in your mind, all right, I should probably wait a little bit to use my boost so I can really get myself as far as. And then you know how whenever you use your boost, you have the boost extension that you can use like a second later?
Yep.
Some people will wait till the very last second to use that boost extension. Because in your mind, you're thinking, all right, if I just really draw out this boost, then I'm going to get farther, right? Now, you're right in thinking that, but the game kind of slaps you in the face a little bit in some places and kind of tells you, nope, you don't need to think that way. And a great example that I can think of is on Windy Way. So on Windy Way, you have the one cut in the middle of the track where you go off the road and you fly really far through the air to the next checkpoint, right?
Yep.
And you'll see a lot of people still, they'll jump off that road or they'll fall off of it, whatever you want to say. And they're going to wait maybe 1 to 2 seconds to use their boost. And then they'll use it. And then they're going to wait till the last second to use their boost extension. Now, I encourage anyone to test this out. Okay? When you jump off of that road, no matter if you use your boost a second after you jump off the road, or if you use it 2 seconds after you jump off the road, or if you use it immediately when you jump off the road, no matter where you start that boost, once you reach that checkpoint at the end of the cut, you are always going to lose the speed from the boost. For some reason, your car will always lose the speed and drop down the 570, and you'll land on that road at that checkpoint. And so what this means is that the people who are waiting a really long time to use that boost, you're actually losing time compared to people who are using their boost the moment they leave that road. Because the people who use the boost the moment they leave that road, they're going to get the speed from the boost quicker, and they're going to keep it in the air ultimately longer than you are. And they are still going to lose all that speed when they reach that checkpoint at the end of the cut. So I don't know why this happens, but it's a thing.
So my mindset, if we're talking about one Windy Way, right? You get you drift through that corner, you hit that boost, you hit you don't hit the turbo, you just boost from your drift, right? Off that ledge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Say you go up and you're at like 7, let's just say 800 for example. You boost up there and you're at 800.
Yeah.
My thinking is exactly what you were just saying, is that I'm at 800. That 800 will stay for like, I don't know, maybe a second, right? Before you start dipping in speed.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately when I see that 800 go to 79, I'll boost. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm not losing anything if I can carry that speed longer. Do you know what I mean? If I'm at 800 and I get to 799, I hit the boost so to carry through all that speed.
Yeah.
You're saying that doesn't make a difference.
Correct. And this is something that's very inconsistent with the game. And you will notice it in specific spots on different maps. And that cut on Windy is one of them. So yeah, if what I would encourage you to try out is on Windy Way, whenever you fall off that road, the moment your car leaves that road surface, if you're going 800 miles per hour because you just finished your drift, the moment you leave it, use your boost, and then whenever the game gives you the option to use your boost extension, use it as soon as you can. And here's the thing, right? Here's something you got to keep in mind too. Even if you using your boost as early as possible ultimately drops you to 570, maybe just a millisecond sooner. Okay, let's think about what we're doing at the end of that cut. Most people, due to what the most common route is, Once you're done with that cut, you're going to land on that road and you're going to drift. That's what most people do. Now, the easiest way to get a drift there and to get a nice, decent drift there for some speed is ideally you're going to want to be slow. You're actually going to want to be at about 570, because if you're going to be 1,000 past that checkpoint, you're just going to fly right into the wall.
Right,
so
for sure.
We're not worried about being 570 when we reach that checkpoint because we want to be there.
Right, because we want to take that slight road that we have between there and the end of that road to build up a drift to gain some more speed, right?
Yes.
Or maximize your drift to gain the most speed.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if you want to run Windy Way right now, we can go ahead and do it. And I will always use my boost the moment I leave the road. I think you can imagine which one I'm talking about.
Right.
And I encourage you to try it out. Try waiting a second to use the boost. Try using it the moment you leave the road. See if there's any difference that you can tell. And if you think that there is a difference, and if you can find that one way is better than the other, by all means use it.
So are you landing at that Windy Way cut? Are you landing beyond the checkpoint or at the checkpoint?
Yeah, so I basically, my car will fly through the checkpoint, and then I typically flip to my left once
Between
I hit
the
the
cacti?
checkpoint. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then my car will land on the road, and I'll do a drift going left.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see what happens.
Okay.
Because I've always thought, even like when you're crossing a gap, like say at, I don't know, Olympus, for example, you're flying a gap and you're like, okay, I built up to 750, I'm going to hold it, and once I get to 749, I'm going to hit my boost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in your head, you're thinking you're just maximizing, right?
Right. But Olympus is also another map where this exact thing happens. And the most common part on Olympus is when you're going from the very final tunnel across the starting line to the top of the starting tunnels. That's another place where this exact phenomena occurs. But let's go ahead and run some Windy Way. No promises that I'll be perfect.
Well, me neither. I really just want to focus that
The cut. Yeah.
but because you'd have to really like slow it down to be able to really tell, right?
Like the exact speeds and at what time?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to really if you really want to compare speeds with where you're starting your boost in the air, then yeah, you would have to go back and watch it on a video. But when you're playing the game, it's like you're basically getting ultimately the same distance at the same time, same speed. You're not getting as big of an advantage over someone if you use the boost later than you think, compared to someone who's using it instantly. So whenever I show anyone this map, I encourage them now to just use the boost as soon as you leave that room. You waiting a second or two to use the boost isn't going to win you a game or give you enough advantage over them to where they're not going to be able to pass you 2 seconds later.
Right.
So.
I think I just hit a cactus.
I'm sure some of them have collision. But yeah, I encourage you and anyone else on that cut there on Olympus go ahead, experiment with the timings of when you want to use the boost. See if there's any big difference that you can notice, and find what's comfortable for you. What's comfortable for me is to use it the moment I leave the road. If you want to be comfortable with waiting a second or two afterwards, by all means, go ahead. But this is what I have kind of noticed while experimenting with the Windy Way and other maps.
This guy's just casually throwing in a 212 like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I know you've been in the streams a little bit, but I don't know if you've been actually watching what I'm doing at all. If you have you noticed anything that I do that I shouldn't do, or something that I need to do instead? I don't know.
Well, I can't. I haven't watched enough to really like be able to remember the exact routes you take or anything like that. But just a general rule that I would give to anyone that wants to improve is, something that a lot of top players have been doing recently in world record runs is really maximizing their drifting and being a lot more precise with it, and being smoother with it, I guess. So, if you notice that you're still a little jittery with your drifting, you're not as smooth as maybe you see others, that is something that you will basically always be working at. And this has to do with taking corners tighter. It's like an Anaconda, right?
Right.
Anaconda, you'll see that the last like 4 world records have all been the exact same route. They've all have drifted at the same time. They've all used their boost at the same time. But the time difference has really just come from them taking the corners tighter and being able to maximize the drifts around each corner.
Right. And so when we're drifting, I think we obviously want to be having long, smooth drifts, right? That's going to maximize your speed, and 2, that drift bar, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like with as little angle as possible, as long as you can maintain that drift, right?
Yeah. So I think probably a good example that comes on top of my head would be Lazy Lake. There's a world record done by Zarza, where you can see this be done a little bit. And then even there on Windy Way, towards the middle part where people are drifting through a couple of those tunnels. Anaconda could be kind of a good example, but I'm really trying to think of other good angles. Maybe the beginning of Olympus on some of the world record runs. What I'm getting at though is there are going to be some turns, usually ones that lead to some sort of jump or gap, right? Where you're going to see people really trying to hold out a drift. So, I mean, Windy Way, great example, right? We do a really long drift through that curve before the long gap, right? And being able to get as much drift there as possible is crucial to having the most speed as you go through the air. And so that's something that people are just going to have to get more and more used to by playing the game. And I guess a tip I'll give now, I don't know if you've been doing this, you'll see Zarza do this if you ever watch his controller overlay whenever he plays in his world record runs. And then I think there's more people starting to adopt this. Again, you might already be doing this and you might not even know it, but there's sort of a technique that you can use with your joystick if you're on controller. I don't think this works on keyboard, but if you're on controller and you're drifting, I encourage you to try to to point your joystick in the diagonal directions instead of just directly to the left or right. And so let's say you're drifting to the left, most people are just going to move their joystick directly left, straight to the left, and then maybe they're going to keep repeatedly tapping it to the left to really hold that drift longer and longer. And so they might tap it over and over again to the left so that they're not just fully turning to the left, but a smoother way that I found to do that is actually move your joystick in the diagonal direction. So if I'm drifting left, I'll move my joystick up into the left. So it's not fully straight up, it's not fully straight to the left, it's a diagonal. And
so
that
gives
allows
a little less input.
Yes, it gives a little less input. You're going to notice your angle. You're not just completely turning to the left. You're not just pushing yourself into a wall, but you're still able to hold the drift, and for potentially a lot longer than someone who's just fully turning their joystick to the left or right. So, and that's going to come, like, the first place that comes to my mind is at the beginning of Olympus. If you watch the new world record route, when after the first little gap, they're going to do a really long drift around that right turn. And a good way to hold that really long is to move your joystick up and to the right. But they're really maximizing the drift there so that they can get as much speed when they go over that first big gap on Olympus.
Right.
So yeah.
Olympus, one of my worst maps. I just can't figure that thing out, man. I just can't figure it out.
Well, funny enough, at this point, I think Olympus is actually my worst map too, if I had to pick. I always seem to get beaten out on it. I always either mess up somewhere, or someone always seems to have an advantage over me, especially at the end. So
exactly, that's exactly where I think. I think I got it, and then right at the end, I don't know what I'm doing between like that last big left-hander and the end of the race, but someone's able to get me.
Yeah, I think most of the time whenever they get me, it's either because they just were able to carry more speed than I did, or maybe they had an extra boost and I didn't. Yeah, and then for me as a whole, I think just the route on Olympus, the best route right now. It just gets more complicated. Seeming like every time that someone goes to do a new world record, the routes just get more and more complicated. So it gets harder to do consistently, especially in a ranked match for 3 laps.
Like I saw is the world record route still jumping, like through that big left-hander, that last big left-hander? Are they still jumping before they get to the gate and then hitting the gate somehow?
Yes. So,
dude, I do that. I just fly in the completely wrong direction.
Yeah. Now, so Chiku, who's another top player, and a great speedrunner, he did a time of 2:45 point, like, I don't know, maybe 08. I can't remember the exact milliseconds, but he did a 2:45 on Olympus, and this was the most recent previous world record. And he did a slightly different route where he doesn't do that jump that you're talking about. He actually drifts all the way around there instead. And so that's an alternative route to the one you're thinking of. That may be easier for some people, because you're not doing this weird little jump that's ultimately a little bit of a cut.
Yeah, and then is he jumping off and then going on top of the tunnel?
Chiku doesn't do it in his newest route, but jumping on top of the tunnel was done a few world records ago. That's no longer the preferred method, though.
I see.
So, yeah, what you'll see them do now, Golio actually just posted the newest world record for Olympus just earlier today or yesterday. And what you'll see him do is he's going to do this jump that you're talking about. He goes through the checkpoint, he's going to dodge himself downwards, and he's just going to push himself to the ground as soon as possible. And when he lands, he's going to release this drift that he built up. It's going to put him all the way up to 800. And then he's going to do another drift as he drives through that tunnel there, and then he's going to boost across that last big gap. He previously would go on top of the tunnel, like you mentioned, and do it there, but we found that it's faster to just go down to the road as soon as possible and do another drift down there instead.
Yeah, I've been experimenting with a couple things there, because everything that I do in Olympus feels bad.
Yeah.
Neutro has a question. Do you think it's better to use a turbo at the same time as a speed pad to get a higher speed, or use turbo a bit later to spread it out?
Yeah, so the short and quick answer to that is I do think it's better to use it on a boost pad. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and let this segue into kind of a broader topic. Is that something you'll see in a lot of the more recent world records is speedrunners have been trying to find ways to really maximize their boost. And what this does is ultimately giving them more speed for a longer time. or given them more speed at a certain cut that they weren't getting before. And a great way to maximize your boost is to use them on boost pads, like Neutros. So you'll see Dust Up 2 is the first thing that comes to mind, right? At the very end of Dust Up 2 on the final lap, currently in the route, you're going to do this drift, this long drift through the dirt. You're going to go around these barriers, and then you're going to jump up and dodge right to these pads on this wooden wall. Okay, and this is at the end of Dust Up 2. And on lap 3, what's best to do is the moment you hit that wooden wall, you're going to use your boost as soon as you hit that first pad. And using it there is ultimately giving you more speed for a longer time through that whole last section of Dust Up 2 compared to if you use that boost at a later time or not on a boost pad at all.
Yeah, because you're gonna be able to carry. You're just gonna be able to carry that speed through that entire section, right? You've maximized the boost pad, but then that speed is just gonna be maximized for that remainder of that section, right?
Yep, 100%. And so that's what people have been able to just experiment with more, and they found out that's a great general rule to go off of for any track. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind and think about at all times.
Question for you that I think might help out everyone that's watching. What is your mindset when you don't have a great start?
Yeah, so because of how the game mechanics work, and we have this great thing called catch up.
First, okay, we'll pause there. We'll just segue for a second. What are your thoughts on the catch up mechanic?
Yeah, so from a neutral standpoint, when it comes to the catch up mechanic, I think it is ultimately an okay addition to the game. And I can see why the devs would want it. Because if we're talking realistically, Fortnite is a game that's more so catered to younger audiences. And I think their broader goal or ultimate goal with rocket racing being put in a game like Fortnite is they want to offer a great casual experience that the majority of players can enjoy. And I think the best way for them to do that would be to try to make the racing as close as possible for people of all skill levels. And so, for any group of friends that's going to go in the rocket racing and play for the first time, I guess the way that the devs thought about how can we make this the most fun and exciting for them would be to add something like catch-up. And so, ultimately, I think catch-up is an okay addition to the game. The downsides of it is when you get more to the top end of players and the more competitive side of the game, right? And I think the best comparison to make here is to the game Trackmania, because if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think Trackmania has any sort of catch-up mechanic.
No, there's not a catch-up mechanic in Trackmania.
Yeah, and Trackmania itself, in my mind, the way I see it, is they are more catered towards a competitive and more serious player base than casual, especially when you compare it to rocket racing, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I played Trackmania a little bit, and then I watched some guy, and they said that there's gears with the cars, and I'm like, dude, I have no idea what gear I'm in when I'm playing. I'm just holding forward and hoping to go as fast as I can.
Yeah. So, when it comes to like Trackmania, in a multiplayer race and any of the tournament races, making one mistake is all the difference.
Oh, you're done. You're done.
Yeah, and the higher you climb up in the ranks in rocket racing, the same thing applies. Okay, especially at the very top where you have people using the same exact routes. If I make one mistake, and God forbid it's on lap 3, right? If I make one mistake, the chance of me winning has dropped immensely. Potentially,
if you were running in second or third, you're finishing 7th or 8th if you make a mistake in lap 3.
Yep. And so now, at that point, I'm just relying on everyone else to make the same mistake I made, or to make a different mistake.
Exactly. I'm with you. I'm with you on the catch-up mechanic. My feelings are the same. And even even going through, like, a lot of people, there's people that complain about when they're going through like elite and champion because they might be feeling like they've run the most optimal route and still somebody ends up like right behind them.
Yeah.
I feel like that clutch factor, knowing that on lap 3 you have to, nail it, because even the guys that have buggered it on lap 1 can still catch up. I don't know, it just gives me a sense of like that clutch factor on lap 3.
Yeah, I think, this all plays into keeping the game exciting, keeping it intense, I guess. That's kind of, I'm assuming that the devs kind of thought about this when they decided to implement this. And so, yeah, being, in first or at the front, lap 3, it just gives you even more pressure to play flawlessly. And, the players that are able to handle that pressure, the players who have practiced enough and can be consistent enough to handle it and finish out that race, those are the people you see climb the leaderboards all the way to the top. And those are the people who will climb through the ranks at a steady pace. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah. All right. So your mindset when you don't have a great start.
Yeah. So mindset when I don't have a great start. Let's say I either get a horrible boost off the starting gate, or
that's me every race. I'm horrible. I'm like I probably am the worst starter in all of the top 100%.
Okay. Yeah. Let's say you screw up in turn 1. Let's say you hit a wall. Let's say you even die. Let's say your car blows up. Now, this is kind of just going to be me talking about my general mindset through the whole race. Okay. One way that people can look at this game and can take these races, and this is going to become more prominent as you get to the top and the more you practice a specific route. A way to think of it, though, is race the track. Don't race the other players around you. Race the track. Do your route. Try to get the best time you can. Don't get distracted by all the people around you. Don't get distracted by the people coming up close to you. Don't let that get in your mind and ruin your run. And so if I have a horrible start, let's say I run into a wall, I mess up poorly, I get all the way sent to the back, I am going to put my faith in the catch-up mechanic for one, to help me get back to the front. But ultimately, I am going to focus as much as I can on doing the rest of the track as best as I can. And as long as I don't screw up anywhere else, then I'm just my chances of coming back and winning is only going to grow. And look, I have made horrible mistakes on lap 2, at the end of lap 1, even at the beginning of lap 3. And no matter what, I always do my best to keep my mindset positive and just trust in myself to stick to what I know, stick to what I've practiced, stick to what I've learned, adapt where I can, and ultimately just finish in the best spot that I can. So I encourage everyone who may find themselves being frustrated whenever they screw up at the beginning, on lap 1, maybe even lap 2, just put it behind you and focus on going forward. If you focus on that mistake for too long, if you focus on what could have been for too long, then you're only going to distract yourself even more and potentially cause a mistake further on in the race. And this is something that I really took to heart when I participated in the first tournament that happened for the game, the first community ran tournament, I should say, the unofficial one. But I feel like a lot of the top players, this is what I'm just assuming, but I think I kind of got this general feeling from it, is that a lot of top players really let the pressure get to them. And what I tried to just tell myself in my head is just, stay calm and just focus on what I've been practicing, remember what I've taught myself, and just race the track. Don't worry about if Golio or Look-Easy was 5 seconds ahead of me, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to worry about being consistent, doing what I can, and ultimately, I think that helped me a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, whenever we have people come into the chat that are like, I'm in gold 1. How do I, I'm hard stuck in elite. How do I get out of elite? And I always preach the exact same thing. I always do my best to stay as calm as possible, because one, you can't control what everyone else is doing on the track,
Yeah.
and you, like you said, you just gotta just race the track, not race everyone else around you. They can do whatever they want, but just believe in the route that you have, and just consistently nail that. And for a lot of the lower ranked players, I'd say players elite and lower, is just pick a route that you're consistently good at. It might not be the fastest route, but at those ranks, if you're just consistently good at it, then everyone else making mistakes around you is just gonna leave you in first anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And to touch on that as well, something I'll say as a general tip to everyone playing the game, no matter your rank, is I encourage everyone to do what they are most comfortable with, over than what may be ultimately faster or harder for you to do. And in my case, what this means is, even if someone like Golio or Yoshi or anyone else is doing some other route that may ultimately be faster than what I'm doing, maybe they're faster in one section of the map than I am, I'm not going to let that bother me. I am just going to do the route that I chose for myself, because that's what I'm most comfortable. And I'll also lead this into the conversation of what I believe, is that something that is more important than speed in this game is consistency. And I think being consistent is just that little bit more important than being the fastest man on the track. Because even if that fastest man on the track, if he ends up screwing up 2 to 3 times through his whole route, but you're consistent and you never make a mistake through your slightly slower route, you're going to be the one that wins, not him.
Yeah, and I think for the majority of my climb through the rank, I think that's where I've excelled at. I'm able to now, I might be horrible on the first lap, but I'm generally pretty consistent and pretty good on laps 2 and 3. Because let me tell you, the amount of times that I've seen 25% at the start of a race, more than any top 100 player, let me tell you. So everyone's always in front of me, but consistent is very key.
Well, look, I can guarantee you that there are still a good number of top 100 players who probably feel pressure when it comes to lap 3 and they're in the lead, and maybe they see some famous person in their lobby, or they see another top player in their lobby. They'll get nervous,
They see Blair Zed in the lobby and just shaking in their boots.
Yeah, they see you right on them, right behind them, going to the finish line, and they're going to be like, "Oh man, I can't screw this up."
It's on stream,
right? They're worried, and then they're gonna, they misinputted, and now you pass them, and they got 7th. It happens, man. It happens.
For sure. Neutro asks, is it better to keep your car on the ground even when you don't have time to drift before you lift off again? Like if you drive off a hill, is it better to flip back to the track or keep flying?
Yeah, so I'm going to say it's better to flip to the ground, because off the top of my head, I can think of a couple places on tracks where you do want to get to the ground as soon as possible. And also, to touch on this, if for anyone who doesn't know, from experimentation from a lot of high rank players in the game, there's actually like a little small team of people who are just like kind of committed to finding all the little small details and all the little mechanics in the game and finding bugs and stuff. From their experimentation, they've noticed that whenever your car is on the ground and you're driving on any surface, you're actually passively building up more turbo than if you were in the air. So a general rule that people follow is try to be in the air as least as possible.
Right. That's
Because you won't be
interesting.
rolling
That's
much.
interesting. So you'll, you know, marginally gain more boost or more turbo buildup if you're on the ground than when you're flying through the air.
Yep, as long as your wheels are touching any surface, you will passively gain more turbo than if you were in the air.
Now, how do these guys find this, really?
Paying attention to a lot of small details.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
For instance, I mean, probably the biggest one that people should know about. I don't even know if you knew about it. But whenever you do a flip, whenever you dodge flip to the left or the right or up or down, your car is actually given an invisible speed boost.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't seem like much, but it's there. And it's been experimented with, and it's a thing.
But it doesn't reflect in the speed, though.
No, it doesn't. Which adds on to just another inconsistency that's inside the game right now. So, yeah, it is a thing. And for anyone who's maybe skeptical, I don't even know how to say the word.
Skeptical?
Anyone who doesn't fully believe it yet, there is a reason why most of the new world records, they just keep adding more and more flips.
Exactly.
It's really funny.
Exactly.
It's kind of, there's like this, it's kind of like a meme where if you want to go beat a world record for any of the tracks, just go do what they did and just add a few
flips. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that just makes you just a little bit faster. But yeah, it's a thing. So
you're on controller. I know that there's a lot of other top players that are on keyboard.
Yeah.
What do you think the percentage is in like the top 50 of people keyboard versus controller, and what are your thoughts between the two? Is there an advantage to either one?
Yeah, so from my knowledge of the people that I know and what they play on, I think it's actually about 50-50, if I had to say, about who plays on what. I think half the people play on controller, half the people play on mouse and keyboard. You have, some people play on PlayStation 5 controllers, some on PS4 controllers, some on Xbox controllers. You have people on mouse and keyboard that use both the mouse and the keyboard. You have some people like Chiku who uses both hands on his keyboard. So
yeah,
let it be known there are multiple ways to play this game. So I'll go ahead and take this time to talk about the peripherals and the keybinds of the game, if you don't mind.
I was just about to get into that, so you beat me to the punch.
Yeah. So there is a lot more to the keybinds than what people may think. It's especially more complicated if you're using mouse and keyboard, but a lot of the rules still apply to controller. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a teaching / rant about all this. So for anyone who is currently either playing the game, whether you are low rank, middle rank, or if you're a high rank player, maybe anyone who's thinking about getting into the game, whether they should play it or not. My first thing that I want to say, and then I want to preface all this with, and the most important thing is play with and however you are most comfortable. Okay? You being the most comfortable you can be is better than you going and changing 50 keybinds that you're not going to be able to get used to or play with for 2 months, right? Play with whatever's comfortable. You can always change keybinds and settings throughout your playtime. However, though, if you are willing to take the daunting task of getting used to some abstract keybinds or something that you may not be used to from other previous games you've played, there are some things I suggest switching to as soon as possible. So, the first thing I could think of is on your bindings. I think it's the same for mouse and keyboard, but I'm just going to speak from a controller perspective on this. Is you will notice in your bindings your rocket drift button and your air dodge will be on the same button by default. Okay, so for me on a PS5 controller, my square button was both the button that I used to initiate a drift and to flip in the air.
You know Heather's coming in hot with that grilled cheese.
Now, this is generally okay. However, as you get better at the game and as you start to experiment with more advanced mechanics in the game, you'll find that having both of those binds on different buttons is potentially easier to play with. Now, again, if you are able to get comfortable with and if you prefer having them both on the same button, by all means do it. But I myself, and I think a lot of other players have found it easier to separate the two. So me personally, I have moved my drift button to L1 or left bumper, and then I keep my flip on my square. So that's how I personally play. So that's my first suggestion. My next biggest suggestion is about the invert flight option. So I think by default in the game, you have invert flight on, and what this means is whenever your car enters the air, you are able to pitch your car either up or down. If you pitch your car up, so the front end goes up, you're going to be able to stay in the air longer. And if you pitch your nose down, you're going to bring yourself to the floor faster. Okay. Now, I actually highly suggest to turn that off. And what this will do is make it to where to make your car point up, so for the nose of your car to point up so that you can stay in the air as long as possible. If you have the invert on, that means you have to move your joystick down. If you have it off, that means you have to move your joystick up. Okay. Sorry if I'm kind of explaining this a little bit poorly, but
no, I got you. I can re-explain it after after we're out of here. But yeah.
Yeah, sure. Now, so I suggest having this off so that if you want your car to pitch up, you're going to move your joystick up, and if you want to move it down, you put your joystick down. Okay. Now the reason for this is it's like a little weird, but it makes complete sense, and there's actually a couple places where this is like a pretty good advantage. Okay. Doing this does give you a slight advantage. Okay. Here's why. Now, whenever let's say you fall off a ramp and you want to bring yourself to the floor as soon as possible. Okay. So you jump off a ramp and you just want to slam right back down to the surface below you. Now, if you have invert on, this is what happens in the game. All right. So let's say you fall off the road, and what you're going to do is you're going to move your joystick down and then hit your flip button, and that's going to make you dodge downwards to the floor. Okay. Well, there's actually something happening in that whole sequence that you don't realize. And what's happening is that for that very split second that you're moving your joystick down, your car is pitching up. Yep. So you're actually losing time getting to the floor compared to someone who has invert off. And when they move their joystick down, their car is going to be going to the floor faster than you are. So there is actually a slight advantage there. And then the same goes for the other direction. Okay. Olympus is the best example. This is like the best place for this advantage to happen. Okay. The last big gap where you go through that tunnel and then you're flying over this long gap to like this circular tunnel that's floating in the air. I think you can kind of imagine what I'm talking about.
Yep.
What people will do is they'll try to get on top of that tunnel at the very end. And so to do that, you typically have to flip up. But whenever you go to do that flip up, if you have invert on, guess what's happening? Your nose is going down for that very split second. So you're actually losing height for just a little bit. And then you're going to flip up and get height back. But for the people who have invert off, whenever they put their joystick up, they're only going to be going up. And they're only going to be getting more height than you. And it actually makes it easier to reach the top of the tunnel.
Depending on the speed, that could be the difference of landing on the tunnel and hitting the tunnel and exploding.
Yep. And that's exactly why I said earlier, Olympus right now is my worst map. Because I have trapped myself into using invert on. And that gap right now is kicking my ass. Excuse my language. But that is hurting me the most on Olympus right now.
So have you changed to have your invert off?
Yep.
Yeah.
That is ultimately what I would suggest that to anyone playing this game is to have invert off. That goes. I'm pretty sure that goes for both keyboard and controller. So yeah. When it comes to keybinds for mouse and keyboard specifically, I'm not going to name any specific names unless you want me to. But I would suggest anyone to just go seek out any of the top players that play on keyboard and mouse and try to find out what specific settings they have and see what might suit you the best. Because they will have more opinions on what's better for mouse and keyboard than I do, since I only play on controller.
Yeah, for sure. I know Chiku just released a binding video, so I mean he's pretty cracked on keyboard, so
yeah. I will say, since you brought it up, I'll say that in that same video, he also goes over controller as well. So he goes over both, but he goes into as much depth as that's needed. He talks about everything that's important. So that's probably one of my go-to people that I would say, especially if you play on mouse and keyboard.
For sure, definitely if you play on mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
Have you? I know I've seen a few people unbinding their jump and thruster.
Yeah, that's something I've actually just recently heard about.
Yeah, me too. I just heard about literally yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
Yesterday, like the day before yesterday.
I don't know if this is something new that people have experimenting with or if they've been using it since the beginning. But yeah, there is. So look, I'll just be honest. Until I heard about this, I didn't even know that those were possible to be on separate buttons. I thought they were just completely intertwined with each other.
They are like separate bindings when you're looking on the thing, but if you're not looking for it, I guess you wouldn't think about it.
Yeah, I didn't think twice. I just always thought, okay, if I press my jump button, I'm using my thrusters. So there are places where having them on separate buttons for your jump, so there's the action of the jumping action is different from using your thrusters, which is what helps keep your car in the air. There are places where using those separately can be beneficial, and really it just comes down to minimizing your air time. Just using your thrusters and not the jump minimizes your air time. And so for me personally, I do not have those separated, and I'm not going to separate them until I find a very good reason for me to. For right now, I don't think I have been convinced yet or found a great reason for me to have to switch them to different buttons immediately. Plus, because of how I hold my controller, I do not play claw, and I use my index finger for throttle. So I'm very limited on how many fingers I'm using and how many buttons I can actually press at once.
Okay, so you use your index finger for throttle.
Yes, I know that there's probably a good amount of people that use their middle finger for throttle. And then they use their index finger they either play claw, so they'll use their index finger for the face buttons like triangle or circle, or they'll use their index finger on R1 or right bumper.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with using my middle finger on throttle, so I just use my index finger.
Right. What sort of background did you come from? Have you always been in Fortnite? Have you played different racing games in the past, or? Yeah,
so my very first game that I ever played, my very first video game, was Gran Turismo 3. So I have grown up with racing games and I have played them my whole life. I've played simulation racing games, I've played arcade racing games, including Trackmania. So I've always been familiar with it. I've always been able to jump into any racing game and really be able to just get in there, have fun, and grasp the concepts that racing game may have fairly easily. So I do have a background with games similar to this. I've also played Rocket League myself. Now, I will say though, a lot of the other top players have played a lot more Rocket League than I have. I'm not so the last time I played Rocket League was 2 years ago, and the highest rank I ever got was Champ 1.
Okay, well, yeah, so. That's funny. I am a resident Champ 1 dweller. Okay. I have over 2,000 hours of Rocket League, and let me tell you, I'm not very good. But in Rocket League, the best button to have your boost on is RB. So transitioning to rocket racing, I immediately just unbound drift and air thrusters and stuck that sucker stuck drift right on RB right away, because I'm already so used to using my index finger for boost that it was like a no, I'm telling you, my left hand can't do anything. So putting it on like left bumper or L1, completely out of the question.
Okay. Yeah. My history with Rocket League specifically is I played it the first day it came out. I remember it was free for PlayStation Plus and the PS4.
Yeah.
So it was everyone got it because it was the new gen console. PlayStation Plus was popping. They were like, "Oh, we're giving you guys free games and everything." Those were the days, and everyone sucked at Rocket League. Everyone was god awful. No one knew how to aerial. No one knew how to flip their car. It was it was a time, let me tell you. But anyways, that's when I first played it. I've been on and off of Rocket League ever since then. And again, the last time that I played it was like 2 years ago. I never played Rocket League enough to get to the point where I was like, all right, I need to switch all my keybinds around, and so I can do all these weird flips in the air and flip reset on the ball and stuff. I never got to that point. But I kept up with the game enough, and I've had friends who, they've changed their key binding. So the reason why I put my drift on the L1 is because I knew people did it in Rocket League. So I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let me go ahead and try that. And I will say, ideally, what I would love to be able to do is be comfortable with my middle finger on throttle, so I could use R1 for like boost or for flip or whatever, something else, right? But I think I'm doing a good job with how I'm currently playing, and I'm comfortable with it. So
you don't say.
Yeah, I don't see a big enough reason for me to have to try to get used to it as soon as possible.
If you are looking to try to get used to using your middle finger for throttle, the easiest way that I found the transition for me was like when I was transitioning from Rocket League, putting boost on R1 and having to use throttle. I was also playing Formula One on with controller.
Okay.
And I found that my index finger, I didn't have enough throttle control to control the car. Like I would play with the expert settings, so traction control off, all that jazz. But what was happening is I didn't have enough throttle control with my index finger, where I would smash the throttle, wheel spin, and completely spin. So I had to change the way I did it. So I used my middle finger for throttle, which I felt like I had a little more input control on, so I could essentially squeeze the throttle instead of mashing the throttle, and it would give me a little more control. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm stuck. I can only use my middle finger for throttle, and I can never go back to using my index finger on that trigger.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds perfectly reasonable, and it sounds like maybe something I should have tried in the past too, because especially on any of the I played Formula One games in the past as well. Just slamming on the throttle too quick, you'll definitely spin out. So I completely see how it could be like a good way to get used to that and to kind of learn from mistakes, I guess.
Yeah,
we're just full throttle the whole time.
Full throttle, just
yeah.
I mean, yeah, for rocket racing, you're just full throttle, all the time. But do you ever find on any tracks where you ever like, maybe I should lift off the throttle around this corner?
Well, me personally, no. But I'm going to assume you do this because I think there's a lot of people that still do this. The one place that I can think of that the majority of people will actually lift off the throttle is on Riviera, and it's on
the second S.
Yes, the second S, second hairpin, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Okay. There is a way to get around that corner perfectly fine without lifting your throttle. I do not lift my throttle there, and the majority of people do. But there is a way to do it there. Do you lift off your throttle there, or do you full throttle?
I think I can get around. Probably I can get around it much less consistency much less consistently if I hold throttle. So for the time being, I lift off and take a closer line.
Okay. I'll give you my secret. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Don't feel pressure.
No, I think this is something that could translate to. This is something that other people can like. Once I say this, this might open the door for someone else that may have never thought to do this. And
I will settle down.
Resonate.
Think this through now. Think this through.
Well, this might resonate with some other people. Okay. Whenever I play racing games, especially as of recently, is I will make markers for myself whenever I'm on a track, and I think real life drivers actually do this too.
Yep. I come from a go-karting background, so
okay. Well,
you pick a braking point, and that's when you're going to brake, and then you pick a turn-in point, and that's when you're going to turn in.
Yep. So basically the exact same thing. And look, I'm telling you, it translates to this game more than you might think.
Oh yeah.
So
for sure. I think that's also part of the reason that I'm an old guy and I'm currently sitting top 50. I mean, it's all about racing lines. Get yourself through the corner fastest, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so on that second hairpin, the one that we're talking about, and you can go do this at some point in time in the future. Try it out. First off, though, what you got to do is if you do not play with shadows on, you need to turn those shadows on because this is how I do it. On that hairpin, there's a tree in the middle of the hairpin, and that tree casts this great big shadow over the hairpin. Okay, it's really huge. And when you're driving into that corner, what I always do is I drive to the right side of the road, so my car will just be just on the curb. Okay, and then I will wait until I will wait just before my car hits the shadow, the beginning of the shadow. Okay, and then once my car gets to that point, I will turn my joystick left and slam down on that drift button. And if I just hold my drift button and turn left all the way through that turn, I will be able to take that turn without hitting any wall. I'll be able to take it very tight and just be able to full throttle through the whole thing.
Love it. I have shadows set to medium, so I should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I think if you have them on medium, the shadows pop in later than if you had it on Epic, the highest setting.
I can't stand shadows, so they're going to stay at medium.
Well, okay, sounds good. But yeah, so I use shadows on multiple tracks in multiple places. I think shadows on is the meta, in my opinion.
Shadows on is the meta. You heard it here first. Zick, Epic Shadows is the meta.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
Neutro asks if you feel that there's any difference between the cars.
Yeah, so okay, difference in the cars I think is one of the most I don't know how I should say this. I don't know if I should say controversial. I don't know if I should say discussions. Look, I think from what I know, I have yet to have anyone come to me with definitive proof that the cars act differently from one another. I don't think that one car is faster than another. I don't think one car builds drift more than another. I don't think one car slows down faster than another. If there is any difference, I think it's in the hitboxes of the cars. So for instance, I think the Lamborghini or maybe the Cyclone has a longer hitbox than the Octane, for instance.
Yep.
But the Octane will have a taller hitbox than the Cyclone, for instance. I think the example that I'll bring up that may have proven to me that there is somewhat of a difference in how the cars feel when they're on a track is in the new tilted turnpike strategy. When you're going over this very hilly section that's just about past midway through the track,
after the tree.
After the tree cut, you get to these hills. What you'll see a lot of people doing now is they'll get to the top of the hill and then they'll slam the car down to the ground the moment they get airtime. They don't want airtime over those hills. They want to get to the ground as soon as possible. And you'll see people drifting through all those hills. Well, what I've noticed is whenever I do it with the Octane, if I was to slam down too early, like if I'm still maybe too high up on the hill, I'm not going on the downward slope yet, if I slam down too early with the Octane, I'll notice my back wheels will actually like kind of pop up in the air. And I don't have experience with other cars. I have only played with Octane since the beginning of the game. I've never switched. So I'm honestly like probably the worst person to ask this question to. But I can only imagine that if I was to use maybe the Jaeger or the Lambo, exactly what happens to my Octane, I don't see that happening to the other cars because they just have like this very flat surface on the bottom. You know, they still got some tail behind the tires. The Octane just has these open wheels, and there's just nothing there. It's just the wheels themselves. So I feel like the Octane has like more of a chance to hit a bump more harshly than any of the other cars, and not really take slamming down to the floor as easily. So
because I've heard some people say that the Octane has an easier suspension, but come on, that's ridiculous.
They say that too, but go tell me why if you go do that little sand drift that's in the new Riviera route, if you do it with the Octane, you'll still gain airtime if you go too high up on the hill.
Right.
I know that all just sounded like a bunch of information at once, but that's like probably one of the best examples I could think of where people might think the Octane should be better at, but no, if you go too high up on this little sand hill
on before the cottages,
yes, I think so.
Yep.
If you go too high up on that sand, you're just going to gain airtime. You'll lose your drift. The Octane doesn't help it as much as you might want it to.
So I was all about the Cyclone. When I was like, I want to get one of these cars because I want my car to look cool. I've played so many hours with the Octane in Rocket League. I'm fiending for the Fennec, but
I want that car to come too. To be honest with you, I want it to come in the game as well.
Because the Fennec is just the perfect car. Like, I don't know, it's just the perfect car. It's a good size.
Yeah.
It just feels great, especially in Rocket League. The Fennec feels unreal. It's a
great all-arounder.
Yeah. But so I was on the Cyclone. I liked the way it looked. I liked the way it handled. Then I went, created an alt account, do this no boost challenge, and I'm in the Octane. And I'm like, wow, the Octane actually feels pretty good. So now I'm back on the Octane.
All right. Well, yeah.
But for me, it's what I tell everybody whenever they ask the question. It's really personal preference. If you feel the best in the Octane, play the Octane. If you feel the best in the Jaeger, play the Jaeger. If you feel the best in the Lambo, play the Lambo.
Yeah, I feel like there's more so a placebo going around for people
sure.
That one car feels different from the other. But you're right. Ultimately, everyone should use whatever they think looks coolest, whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever feels the best for you.
And nobody should use a Scorpion.
Okay, if you want a car that so the car with the most advantage. All right. So if you want an answer, the car that has the most advantage in the game is the Lambo. All right. Here's why: the engine is 10 times louder than any other engine. So when you're right behind someone, even if you're actually on the other side of the map, they're still going to think you're right behind them, and it intimidates them. For me, whenever I race Golio, the most intimidating thing to me about Golio is how loud his Lamborghini engine is. Because it will just never escape me. If I'm ahead of him, he's going to be right behind me, and it's like a mind game. It's like, oh man, I can't never not think that he's behind me because of it.
All right, so chat, you heard it here first. Lambo is the best car.
Yeah, just for intimidation factor.
Yeah,
gives you plus 10 intimidation
They
points.
Could be 3 corners behind you, and it could be right on, and feel like you're right on their bumper.
It is an airplane. It really is.
All right, Zick, I know you said an hour. I've pushed you a little bit past that.
Well, no worries. You want to do one more question? Or
do I have another question? I don't know. Chat, do we have any questions for Zick? This is basically the first rocket racing podcast.
Yeah, honestly, you can say that too. and hey, I'll say as well, man, I've had a great time talking with you so far about all this. I'm not against ever coming back on the stream or, talking with you again in the future. So
love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Want to if there's anything we missed out on talking about that you really want to get an answer for, hear my perspective from it.
I'm sure chat will have tons of questions that they'll think of afterwards. Be good to see some Private games with more top 50 players. Well, blah, sometimes our community lobbies are pretty cracked. I mean, we've had Zick, Golio, Dominic, and Zick pops in and out for some community games every now and then. So
yeah, I'll be looking forward to doing more with you guys as well. So I always love doing private matches with people.
Yeah. I mean, if the stream's live, there's a good chance that that we're running some community games. So just hit that request button and in you come.
Yeah, I would love to play with you guys some community games today, but I'm gonna have to dip after this. So
no worries. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on to the Rocket Racing podcast with Blair and Zick. It was a good time. We didn't. I think we ran one windy way, but I loved all the feedback and insight, and I'm sure chat loved it as well. So I appreciate
it was
that,
great.
man.
Anytime, man. Anything else?
I think. Oh, somebody asked, do you know what percentage of players are Unreal? I think there's like 600 Unreal players right now.
Probably roughly around there. If you want to find the exact number, you'll want to go on to Fortnite.com. You'll find their official leaderboard there. That is always updated.
Yeah, you just keep on scrolling. Keep on scrolling.
Yeah.
Gertz Gaming says, "Stay cracked, Zick."
I will try my best. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. Just hit me up again. I'll always be in touch. My DMs are always open. And yeah, I appreciate you allowing me to come on here and talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Take it easy,
yeah,
man.
have fun with the marathon. Good luck in ranked.
For sure.
All right, see you later.